Hi and welcome. I'm Hazen, and in today's video, I'm going to be discussing proposal and invoice automation. Now, most professional service firms, they don't lose deals during the consultation. They lose momentum after it because once the call ends, the process usually shifts into admin. Now, someone has to create the proposal, send the follow-ups, and handle payments. And that's rarely done as quickly or as consistently as it should be. Now, the process, sometimes it gets delayed to later that day, sometimes it gets delayed to the following day, or sometimes it gets delayed altogether. And in that gap, that's where momentum is lost. The proposal goes out later than it should, follow-up becomes uneven, and payments get pushed back. And it's not because the business doesn't care, but because the process is dependent on someone having the time or remembering to do it. And that's where the process starts to break down. Anything that depends on memory becomes inconsistent, and anything that's inconsistent becomes unreliable. So, what looks like a follow up issue on the surface is usually a workflow design issue underneath. The answer isn't usually more reminders, it's to have a better process design. Because in a lot of firms, follow up sits outside the workflow. It's treated as something that happens after the real work is done. And from a systems perspective, that's the wrong way to think about it. The post-consultation stage is not separate from the client journey. It's part of it. And if that part's slow, inconsistent, or dependent on memory, the whole process becomes less reliable. When follow-up isn't built into the workflow properly, three things break. Firstly, you lose speed, as there's a delay between conversation and action. Secondly, you lose consistency because manual steps happen unevenly. And thirdly, you lose momentum, and that affects both conversion and cash flow timing. The goal isn't just to be more responsive. The goal is to remove the responsiveness depending on memory in the first place. So that means designing the workflow so that once a decision is made, the next steps happen automatically. When proposal creation, follow-up, and payment is built into the workflow itself, everything changes. Response time improves, consistency improves, and the gap between agreement and action gets much smaller because the process no longer depends on someone remembering what to do. The system handles it. That's the thinking behind the workflow I showed in the demo. Once a deal is approved, the next stage is triggered automatically. The proposal is created, follow-up is sent, and the payment step is initiated. It's not a checklist someone has to complete later on, but it's part of the system itself. And that's where the real value sits, not just in saving admin time, although that matters. The real value is in reducing friction at the exact point where intent needs to turn into action. And that's where a lot of firms lose momentum. It's not in the conversation itself, it's what happens afterwards. So the opportunity here isn't just to automate tasks, it's to design a workflow where the follow-up is immediate, consistent, and built into the process. And that's the difference between a manual process and a system that runs by design. So for most professional service firms, the post-consultation stage is one of the clearest places to improve operations, client experience, and revenue flow without adding more work. Follow for more insights and demo walkthroughs. Thank you for watching.